70% of you guys said you would like to become more assertive, but you have no idea how to do so. And I don't blame you, because I don't remember anyone in school teaching us how to stand up for ourselves and protect our needs and wants. So, within the next few minutes, I'm going to give you the only guide you'll ever need to watch on how to become more assertive, so your relationships can stop operating with the power imbalance between a snail and a lion. Whether you're the snail or the lion, I'll let you decide. There is only one book you need to read on how to become more assertive. People Skills by Robert Bolton. But don't worry, I've read it for you. So first, let's outline exactly what we mean by assertiveness. Assertiveness is the use of verbal and non-verbal behaviours which enable you to maintain respect, satisfy your needs, and defend your rights without dominating, manipulating, abusing, or controlling others. Surprising? Perhaps you thought being assertive means you dominate other people. Absolutely not. Because as we'll see in a minute, there are clear distinctions between aggressiveness and assertiveness. Assertiveness is about open and honest communication. It's the yin in the yin and yang of communication skills, with the yang being listening skills. In psychotherapy, assertiveness plays a key role as it's one of the main things people aim to work on besides battling their anxiety and depression. But why do we need to become more assertive? Great question. It's because throughout life there will always be some pesky buggers who will overstep our boundaries, fail to see we've even set boundaries in the first place, or will do everything in their power to overstep onto our psychological, physical and values territory. As human beings, we all have an appropriate emotional distance we need to keep from other people. And assertiveness is what we must use in order to communicate that distance to other people. What are some ways people might cross our psychological boundaries? Other people might refuse to make put-down comments, ask nosy questions, offer unwarranted advice, manipulate us into doing what they want, overwhelm us with their affection, attempt to submerge our own identity in theirs, or just be an annoying twat who plays their music loudly on the train. We all have an inner desire to be our own person and own all of our thoughts, values, desires and physical space, otherwise known as our life space. The tricky thing is, many people try to enact something called spiritual aggression whereby they infringe their values onto us. For example, coaches onto players, teachers onto students, parents onto kids, employers onto employees. Here's a further description from Lois Timmons about life space. Life space is acquired through birth, kept through determination, and lost through weakness. When I have life space, I either occupy it or lose it. When I have life space, I feel a purpose in life, self-confidence, assured, satisfied, well-adjusted, full, responsible, self-controlled, powerful, and aware. We all know the feeling of other people walking all over us, but the first harsh truth of the day is people only walk all over you because you haven't taught them how to not do so. And if you've never learned how to do so or been taught how to do so, the thought of doing so, embracing conflict, can seem very outlandish and scary. But becoming more assertive is just like learning a new language. First you master the words, phrases and ground rules, then you can communicate a child's vocabulary, then you acquire fluency, then you get the freedom to be creative. Just a few more things about assertion before we move on. You can't be too assertive. It's impossible. True assertiveness is a way of being in the world which confirms one's own individual worth and dignity while simultaneously confirming and maintaining the worth of others. The assertive person stands up for her own rights and expresses her personal needs, values, concerns, and ideas in direct and appropriate ways. While meeting her own needs, she does not violate the needs of others or trespass on their personal space. Assertive people also like themselves, and they are assertive because they believe what they have to say is important. As highlighted by psychologist Herbert Festerheim, the extent to which you can assert yourself determines the level of your self-esteem. Have a quick think about the relationships in your life you would describe as most healthy. It's likely a healthy relationship because both of you are able to be assertive people within the relationship, no matter the relationship dynamic. Lastly, the only costs of being assertive is the discomfort of expressing vulnerability to express your emotions, the potential risk of conflict, which we're going to learn how to diminish later, or the risk of getting fired or dumped after we express our wants and needs. But despite all of these potential risks of being assertive, assertiveness works 99% of the time. So although the task seems daunting, the rewards are immense in terms of building your confidence, the quality of your relationships with others, and your mental health. Not to mention, you're going to learn so much more about yourself through being assertive as well. So let's get straight into how to become more assertive. First, you need to place yourself on the continuum between submissiveness, assertiveness, and aggressiveness. So before we get into the three-part assertion message, let's quickly outline what submissiveness and aggressiveness actually are. Submissiveness was termed non-assertion by early psychologists, but this doesn't suffice. Because non-assertion implies something neutral, as if you're not complicit in the interaction that's happening. Submissiveness is when a person actually chooses to submit to someone else, working in unison with whoever is being assertive or aggressive. Submissive people don't voice their needs and wants when doing so is what would allow them to get them met. Or they might state their needs and wants but instantly follow it up with comments such as, "But do whatever you want," or "It doesn't matter in the end, I don't care," completely undermining everything they've just said. They might avoid eye contact when talking to you or shy away from potential conflict, and because their passive behaviour undermines everything they're communicating, people usually don't take them very seriously. A submissive person communicates, "I don't matter, you can take advantage of me, I'll put up with just about anything from you, my needs are insignificant, yours are more important, my feelings are irrelevant, yours matter, my ideas are worthless, only yours are significant, I have no rights, but of course you do. Pardon me for living." Lastly, submissive people don't just show a lack of respect to themselves, but to others as well, for their reluctance to express their needs and wants indicates they don't believe the person they want to communicate it to would be able to handle them. But submissiveness isn't all bad. Submissiveness can actually help you avoid conflict and gain control in a relationship in underhanded ways, fading into the background and then orchestrating the relationship from that angle, if that floats your boat. But of course the negatives far outweigh the positives when it comes to being submissive, because submissive people are prone to Mount Vesuvius stores of anger and resentment until it all explodes one day. We can imagine the personification of submissiveness as a mouse. Now let's get on to aggressiveness. The etymology of the word aggressive is a little bit tricky because it has two meanings. The root of the word is aggredi in Latin, which could mean to go forward or to approach someone for counsel or advice. But a better definition of the word aggression would be to move against or move with the intention to hurt. So aggressive people express their needs and wants, but they do so at the expense of the other person. This is what I want. What you want is of lesser importance, or of no importance at all. Sometimes aggression is required in certain hostile situations, and it can offer the potential rewards of control, power, and dominance in relationships, again, if that's what floats your boat. But because aggressiveness turns other people into things that you control and dictate, aggressiveness in one person usually always invites aggressiveness out in the other person. And aggressiveness usually comes from a place of insecurity and weakness. As the saying goes, the loudest person in the room is the most insecure. You can think of the personification of aggressiveness as a T-Rex, angry, hostile, always on the hunt for victims and prey. Note, when you're placing yourself on the continuum between submissiveness, assertiveness, and aggressiveness, in different relationships, you might be more submissive, you might be more assertive, or you might be more aggressive. It will likely be different for everyone you interact with, but you might have a general idea of, on average, where you would place yourself on the continuum most of the time. But now let's get into what you came here for, the killer key to becoming more assertive. Now we understand being assertive is a positive thing whereby you respect your needs and the needs of the other person. But how can you actually communicate these needs effectively? Well, there's a technique we're going to cover called the three-part assertion message you can use in any interaction where you want to become more assertive. Because as humans, we don't have to just rely on the fight or flight response. We can use our words. So the three-part assertion message involves a non-judgmental description of the behaviour triggering you, a disclosure of how that behaviour makes you feel, and a clarification of the concrete and tangible effect the other person's behaviour is having on you. Practically, the message looks like this. When you, I feel, because. For example, when you play your music loud in the office, I feel annoyed because I can't focus on my work. When we've scheduled our date for 7 PM but you turn up at 8:30, I feel irritated because I could have spent my time doing other things. We're going to outline how to perfect this message and the pro communication tips you can use in order to take delivering this message from average to great, but first it's important we cover the role of stress when delivering such a message. When we feel that fight or flight response, either being submissive or too aggressive, our blood gets routed away from our brain and into our skeletal muscles, so our speech might be affected. But through delivering a message like this, you not only calm yourself down, but you actually calm the other person down as well if tension is quite high. So now let's get into the pro tips of delivering this message with some killer examples. Tip 1. Describe the behaviour in clear rather than fuzzy terms. Listen to some of these examples and have a think about which one sounds best. When you don't shovel the snow from the driveway before going to school. When you don't do your part around the house. When you arrive late for work 3 times this week. When you ignore company policies. When you are not ready to leave for work by 7:30. When you dawdle over your breakfast. Obviously I was emphasising it a bit with my speech, but hopefully you could tell that column 1 was the best way to deliver the message, because the behaviour stated was clear and it indicates exactly what the other person is doing that is triggering us. Tip number 2. Limit the description strictly to their behaviour, not their attitude or potential motivations. Because the key when delivering this message is to do it without judgment. Because remember, when we attack or judge another person, we're infringing onto their life space. Here are some good and bad examples. When you talked more than any of the others at the meeting today and cut off several people before they were finished. When you behaved so rudely at the meeting. When you sat in silence for the whole evening. When you sat in silence just because I laughed at you. Language here is key. To avoid coming across as judgmental, avoid using absolutes, swear words, or character assassinations. For example, when you repeatedly talk more than others in our call. When you have constipation of the brain and diarrhea of the mouth. Jesus, who would say that? When you are frequently late in picking me up. When you are never on time. When you interrupt me before I have completed my statement. When you constantly interrupt me. When you do not have my car repaired at the time promised. You lying son of a bitch. You promised that my car would be ready by 4. Hopefully you could tell which were better. Also, avoid descriptions where judgment words creep in. When you don't return the can opener to the same place after you are through with it. When you hide the can opener from me. When you overspend our clothing budget. When you waste our hard-earned money on unnecessary clothing. A quick explanation from Robert Bolton on why it's never important, even though it's incredibly tempting to do so, to use judgmental words in this description. Do you want to have maximum likelihood of changing the other person's behaviour and maintaining the relationship through an assertive message? Or would you rather tell off the other person, even though you will have less chance to change the behaviour and maintain a good relationship? Tip number 5. Make it as brief as possible. People need clarity. For example, when you are frequently late for dinner, when you get all involved in your football game and forget about the family and come home late and all dirty for dinner. Just slightly too waffly, that one. Tip number 6. Assert about the right thing. Do not overlook little things. There's a short story to explain this. A man who walked across the coasts of the Pacific and Atlantic Oceans was besieged by reporters after he finished his journey. What was the hardest part of it all, the reporters asked. The tough winds, the Rocky Mountains, the city of Chicago? None of these things, said the hiker. What was it then? Asked the reporters. The sand in my shoe, he concluded. If your flatmate leaving a bowl out in the morning before he goes to work annoys you, don't overlook it. There is nothing too small to not assert about if that thing infringes on your personal space. When people do not get their needs met in the commonplace trivialities of life, they build up reservoirs of resentment that diminish their acceptance of the other person, undermine the enjoyment of the relationship, and make it far more difficult to solve the big problems when they arise. But asserting about the right thing doesn't always have to involve little things. So in order to assert about the right thing, you need to make sure you're not substituting the thing you want to assert about with something else. For example, a girlfriend used the following 3-part assertion message on her boyfriend. When you stay out late drinking, I feel annoyed because things aren't getting done at home. But things not getting done at home wasn't what she wanted to assert about. What she really wanted to communicate is she wanted to spend more time with her boyfriend. Again, don't gloss over the little details. If your workmate constantly leaves your tools out in the rain and they get rusty, but you're also annoyed at how he doesn't treat you civilly, understand that those two things are the same thing. Him leaving your work tools out in the rain so they get rusty is a byproduct of him not treating you civilly. Also, beware of something psychologists call emotional substitution, whereby we replace a primary emotion we feel with a secondary one. For example, if someone jump scares you, you might react angrily when what you really feel is fright. So to guard against this when you're asserting, just ask, when I experience the behaviour of the other person, what emotion did I feel first? Because the emotion you feel first is usually the emotion you need to assert about. Speaking of emotions, tip number 7. Avoid judgment emotions. Avoid, avoid, avoid. Here's an example of a judgment emotion. When you smoke in the office, I feel abused because my throat gets irritated. When you smoke in the office, I feel annoyed because my throat gets irritated. Do not overstate the emotion, nor understate it. Make sure you choose your emotive word with precision. If you're struggling to tell what emotion you're feeling, just listen to them. Whenever you are ready to stop telling your emotions what they should be, they will tell you what they really are. Tip number 8, assert to the right person. Don't make the mistake of misattributed assertion. For example, we all had that one teacher in school who singled out one kid in the class when really it was the whole group who was being a nuisance. Tip number 9, don't assert on someone else's behalf. It just won't come across in the same way. Lastly, the 3-part assertion message should highlight clearly the effect this person's behaviour is having on us, giving them a clear reason to change. In the following examples, you can see in brackets the clear effect that this person's behaviour is having. When you use my car and don't fill the gas tank, I feel unfairly treated because I have to pay more money for gasoline. When you borrow my tools and leave them out in the rain, I feel annoyed because they become rusty and don't work well. When you are frequently late to pick me up after work, I feel frustrated because my time is wasted while I wait for you. When you don't put your dirty clothes in the washing basket, I feel irritated because it makes extra work for me when I do the wash. And crafting and delivering this 3-part assertion message can feel really weird and unnatural and even a bit scary if you've never done it before. That's completely normal. It takes time to practice it. However, not all is as easy as we think, because delivering the message is only half the battle. Next, we need to know how to battle the inevitable defensiveness in the person we're asserting to when they receive our message, otherwise known as the push-push-back phenomenon. When you send the 3-part assertion message, you should expect defensiveness in the other person, because who wants to find out they're invading someone else's life space and that person wants them to change their behaviour? A quick note on defensiveness. Usually defensiveness in one person always invites defensiveness out in another person, so we need to learn how to develop something called tactical empathy, where we can discharge the emotion in the situation. We're going to get into this next, but first, here's how a 3-part assertion message can get quickly out of hand. When you leave my tools outside, I feel angry because they get rusty. Well, if you would do the man's work around this place, I wouldn't have to use your damn tools. You know as well as I that I've had no time to do any repairs this week. I brought work home from the office every night. You seem to have lots of time to watch football Sunday afternoon and on Monday night too. Well, at least I don't have to watch those stupid operas all afternoon while the house goes to seed around me. Only an imbecile would watch those things. And that's just the beginning. Everett then went on to insult Charlene's mother, to which Charlene responded by saying he doesn't satisfy her sexually. So to tackle defensiveness in others when we deliver our assertion message, there are 6 steps we need to follow. Number 1. Preparation. If you aren't spontaneously delivering the message in the heat of the moment and you have some time to think about how you want to craft it, consider the following. Am I refraining from trespassing on the other's personal space? Am I asserting about something that's a persistent concern? Have I built a level of trust with the other person? Am I likely to get my needs met through my assertion? Then write the message out by hand and think about all of the potential objections this other person could raise when you deliver your message. Then secure an appointment to talk to them. This way they won't be able to give the excuse of, I'm busy, and just pass off your comments with disregard. Also, don't deliver this message in public unless you have a good level of trust between you and this other person. Step number 2, send the message. When delivering the message face to face or over the phone, forget about small talk, because if you engage in small talk, it's going to undermine everything that you're going to say next. Just get straight to it. You might like to open your conversation like this. Thanks for setting aside the time for this. I really appreciate it. No worries. I'm interested to hear what you have to say. I appreciate it because I'd like to figure out something that's been bothering me. I feel, because. Your body language when you're delivering this message should be resonant with your words, meaning they match. Here's what to pay attention to in terms of body language. Posture. Face the other person square on. Sit or stand upright, maybe leaning slightly forward but at an appropriate distance. Keep your head straight and upright. Place your feet firmly on the ground even if you're sitting down. And maintain an open posture with your chest, arms and legs, and do not cross your arms. Eye contact. Look directly into the eyes of the person you're asserting to. This helps you convey the meaning of what you want to say. But don't overwhelm them with an intense, aggressive stare beaming into their soul. A serious, steady look into the other person's eyes, occasionally interrupted by a look away, helps us convey the purpose of what we want to say without being aggressive. Facial expressions. Again, they should match the message you're delivering. Don't smile or laugh nervously when giving the message. This would send a double message where you're sending one message verbally with your words and then another message with your or gestures. Practice in front of a mirror when delivering this message or in front of other people to see if you're actually smiling or not. Gestures. Don't become rigid and statue-like when asserting. Again, this will impede your assertiveness. The right gestures at the right moment can enhance your assertiveness, but don't go overboard like banging your fist on the table or pointing at them. Also, don't fidget, don't cover your mouth, don't shrug your shoulders, and don't play with your jewellery. Voice. Don't be whispery and don't speak in a very sing-songy voice. Remember, you want to convince the other person to vacate your personal space. So aim for a calm yet firm voice. And you can do so by ending all of your sentences downward instead of upward. How can you make sure you're so calm? Well, when you've planned the message and written it down, you've already discharged a lot of the emotion from it. And you can discharge your emotion by expecting the other person to meet your needs. Lastly, breath. Having sufficient breath is much more important than you realise. When you have little air in your lungs, your chest cage shrinks and you come across as less assertive. And diminished air also leads to diminished energy, and you're going to need all the energy you can get. So a full chest of air is required for the desired assertiveness, and make sure you plant both of your feet on the floor, and if you have time before you deliver the message or speak to the person, you might want to do the box breathing technique where you inhale for 4 seconds, hold for 4 seconds, exhale for 4 seconds. Remember, you must communicate as if you expect your needs to be met. Not like this. When we set our date for 7 o'clock and you come at 8:15, I feel annoyed because I couldn't finish painting my room once I got dressed up. Or like this. When we set our date for 7 and you turn up at 8:15, I feel so annoyed because I couldn't finish painting my room once I got dressed up. A message delivered in that way would probably lead to spite in the other person, where they'll either lazily comply with what you've requested or just do the complete opposite out of annoyance. Here's a good example of how to do it. When we set our date for 7 and you turn up at 8:15, I feel annoyed because I couldn't finish painting my room once I got dressed up. Point number 3, silence. After you deliver your message, you must be silent, because this offers the other person to gather their thoughts. Defensiveness is to be expected in them, so they need time to figure out how they're best going to meet your requests. Part 4, reflective listening to the other person's defense response. This is where the magic happens. During reflective listening, what you do is you listen as attentively as possible to the other person, just trying to get the information from what they're saying without judging it in any way. And when you do this is gonna, for the better or the worse, reveal a lot of things about your relationship with this person, especially about how they view it. If they go haywire and react aggressively or start shouting, remain calm and just try as best as you can to reflect what they're saying back to them. Here's a graph to illustrate this process and how lengthy it can be. You can see the first assertion is made, reflective listening response, continued defensiveness, and I think overall there are 3 different redeliveries of the assertive message until a thank you is offered and the other person offers to alter their behaviour. This is an example of what reflective listening looks like. When you produce 30% this month than in previous months, I feel annoyed because it lowers the productivity of our unit and I get less pay. The others sure were right. You're just a patriarchal male who hates all women. You think that what I said about your productivity is a smokescreen for my anger towards you because you're a woman. You said it. You men are nothing more than a bunch of aggressive, power-hungry idiots. Men today are really forceful and you're sick of it. Yeah. Why don't you just push over and let the women rule things for once? You feel I shouldn't hold the job position I do. You're just using your power to treat others badly. Olivia, when you produce 30% less this month than in previous months, I feel annoyed because that lowers the productivity of our unit and I receive less pay. In these examples, it's going to seem very unnatural, but when you start practicing using this message to help other people vacate your personal space, it will become second nature, especially with the reflective listening aspect as well. Part number 5, recycling steps 2 through 4 as often as necessary. Sometimes people will ask you questions in response to your message, but this is often a subconscious tactic used to avoid the conflict of the situation. So here's a rule of thumb. More often than not, do not respond to people's questions with an answer but with a reflection. For example, when you don't wash the dishes, I feel annoyed because it creates more work for me. Did you always do the dishes when you were a kid? You doubt that I lived up to the standards I expect of you. Don't engage in a debate with the other person because debates are win-lose, so sidestep them again with a reflection. If the other person starts crying, stand firm, because this is often another tactic of manipulation. Instead, assume the person is genuinely sad and upset by reflecting their emotions back to them and suggest you continue your conversation at another time. Then, when it's time for that new conversation, reassert in the same way you did before. Don't give in. If the other person withdraws from you by ignoring you or using silence after you assert, no, they just need to change their behaviour. They don't need to be over the moon about it. When dealing with withdrawal, reflect their body language back to them by saying, I take your silence to mean that you don't want to talk about it and that you will meet my needs by, I'll touch bases with you next Sunday to make sure this is still working out okay. Then, when the other person engages, pay attention to the subtle ways that they hint at solutions. Because when we're reflectively listening and really trying to pay attention to what the other person is saying, it's easy to get lost in what they're saying and to forget that they're actually offering solutions. An important assertiveness skill is to capture the nuanced solutions the other person offers for your predicament and then to reflect it back to them and give them silence for them to explore it further. Lastly, persistence is key. The reason most people fail in their assertions is because they give up too early. Note it takes anywhere between 3 to 10 re-deliveries of your assertive message for the person to actually change their behaviour. Lastly, number 6, focusing on the solution. Speaking of solutions, the other person needs to come up with the solution so they can reclaim some of their dignity. Because if they don't come up with the solution, they won't change. Remember, they don't need to be happy about it. It doesn't need to change their attitude, although that might come in time. Their solution simply needs to meet your needs. Then, when they come up with a solution that actually does meet your needs, say thank you and reflect it back to them. Then, this is going to sound very awkward, but schedule a check-in date with this person, if necessary, to see if the solution is still being upheld. This avoids the kissed out the door phenomenon where they say, yeah, I'll do this, but never change. Also, when you're delivering the 3-part assertion message, it doesn't always have to be in response to someone doing something triggering for you. In a very positive way, you can use it to tell someone a message of appreciation, using the exact same structure. For example, when you, I feel, because. You might say to your girlfriend, when you hug me after I come home from work, I feel loved, because it shows you appreciate the quality of our interactions. Or you might say to one of your friends, when you call me to check up if I'm okay, I feel grateful, because it shows you really care about me. Finally, there will be some situations in life where we won't have the luxury of delivering such a message, and we'll need to stop someone's behaviour straight away. So here's a quicker way on how to assert yourself. If someone is doing something that needs to be stopped right away, use the following 4 steps. 1. Stop the action. 2. Don't become emotionally heated yourself. 3. Accept the feeling. 4. Suggest alternative behaviours if possible. For example, imagine a dad who's just seen one of his sons hit his other son. He might say, stop hitting your brother right now. You are real mad at him and want to hurt him. Feeling mad is okay, but hitting him is not. Here, you can pound this pillow and get some of your anger out. I remember in the leisure centre I used to work in about a year ago, I witnessed a fight between a 16-year-old kid and a fully grown man. I came out of the office to hear loads of people screaming and shouting, and I saw the 16-year-old kid who was stood there right in the thick of it, really huffing and puffing, trying to get to this older man because they had had a disagreement. So I put my hand on his shoulder, gradually walked him to the exit and said, I bet you feel really angry right now. Follow me and let's go on a walk, so I could distract him from the situation. Lastly, before we summarise, being assertive a lot of the time involves saying the word no. So here are 6 ways you can say the word no. 1. Natural no. 2. Reflective listening, then no. You really need to help me out at the barbecue. I'd love to help, but I made prior plans. I just can't do it this weekend. The reason no. No, thanks anyway. I don't like playing that game. The rain check no. I can't do it this weekend, but next weekend I can. The broken record no. State one sentence again and again and again. The flat out no. No, without a reason or any justification. To summarise, assertiveness is the use of verbal and non-verbal behaviours which enable you to maintain respect, satisfy your needs, and defend your rights without dominating, manipulating, abusing, or controlling others. Assertion involves open and honest communication, and it not only protects our wants and needs, but greatly improves our relationships with others. To be assertive, use the 3-part assertion message. When you, I feel, because. Deliver the message with the expectation your needs will be met. Then engage the steps of the push-push-back phenomenon by reflectively listening to the other's defensiveness, reasserting and repeating these steps until the other person offers a solution for how to meet your needs. That was a long one. Let's leave it there. Thank you for watching. Thank you for your time and attention. Stay disciplined, playful, dangerous. Adios, muchachos.